Okay, so we're all here hopefully for History 108. It's modern U.S. history. And modern U.S. history goes from the end of the Civil War until the present. Okay, so that's approximately the time period we're going to be covering. How many, I always start off with this, how many veterans do I have in the classroom? Okay, two of us? Two. What branch?
Army.
Army? Me too. What unit?
I was the first cap, but now I'm the 160th.
Okay, so are you still in the reserves? Or?
Yeah, this is reserve right now.
Okay, all right. If you ain't Cav, you ain't shit, right? Isn't that the same? Okay, I was Cav too, so 82nd Airborne, 1st 17th Air Cavalry. So, man, that's cool. A fellow Cav member right here. Do you know about our veterans program here on campus?
A little bit.
Okay, well, just hang with me a little after class. I'll get you up to speed on that. Okay. We do have a really wonderful veterans program here. It's one of the things I think we're proudest of, besides our basketball team, men's basketball team, right? How many student athletes do I have? Okay, awesome. Any basketball? Okay. Women's basketball? How they doing?
Well, I used to play.
Used to play? Okay. All right. But the men's team is, they're like in first place in the, I don't know, somebody help me. I heard.
State?
In state, okay. And they won state championship last year, right? Okay. All right. Well, okay, so there's a lot of exciting things going on. I know that all of you are having trouble getting into classes, the classes that you want, especially the ones that you need for transfer, because state budget problems and all that. So hopefully we can get that all straightened out. Hopefully this bailout package that the president is pushing through will include us, not just Wall Street bankers and mortgage lenders. But okay, so our idea here is to deal with American history, but really it's all about what's going on right now too, right? It's what's going on right now. And I have this little slide presentation I do at the beginning to kind of get us thinking about some of the ideas that I have about history, and then it'll give you a little bit of background about me too. I know some of you already have been in my other classes, so you'll maybe have seen some of this. But I try to add a little bit of new stuff every time. You know what month this is, right? Every month is supposed to be a special month. It's Black History Month, right? Well, now that we have an African American president, it's Black History Month every day for the whole year, right? I think it's pretty cool. I think it's really cool. I think it's great. And I think it's going to become, eventually, it's moving us closer towards it becoming less of an issue, you know? And you know what it is, right? Racism. Okay, we're moving closer. I think the fact that Hillary Clinton, although she was not successful in getting nominated or becoming president, made it less of an issue to be a serious candidate as a woman. A lot of good things came out of that election, whether you know, maybe didn't vote Democratic and your Republican person didn't win. Good things have happened and will happen. Okay, so I think that's something that we should all be proud of in our political system. We also had another peaceful transfer of power. Not every country has that. When you go from one president to the other, oftentimes there's armed conflict. Now, we did have that during the Civil War, which is something that we're going to be talking about, the severity of what happened during the Civil War. So we will be addressing that, but you know, thank God we do have peaceful transfers of power. Okay, so that's me. This is History 108. So let's get right to it. I want you to interpret those images. Oh yes, go ahead.
When you start, when we gonna need our book by?
The book?
Yeah.
You should get the book right away. Okay, and there's just one book. I'll go over the syllabus with you. I can show it to you online. And I'll show you how to get a hold of the syllabus, because I don't hand one out in class. It's on Blackboard. If you're not sure how to get on Blackboard, well, I'll even show you how to do that. So I'm going to get you all going. And the cool thing about Blackboard is not only is your syllabus there, but course documents are there too. And maybe even if I get really ambitious, I might transferred all the course videos over to our website as well. They're on the online website now for the online class, but if you guys find a need for having the course videos, let's say you're sick one day and we're going to talk about World War I, and you can look at the class notes because you can download those, print those out, but you want to know, what did I talk about? What did the class talk about? You can watch the course video and say, oh, and now that doesn't mean you shouldn't show up, right? So you got to be careful, you know. Oh, I never have to show up. He films everything. Dude, you don't have to show up, you know. He films everything. So it's not a substitute for being here, but it is something you can use, because oftentimes students say, hey, what do we do? You know, can I get the notes? What do I do? It's all self-contained. It's all there for you. Okay? I do as much as I can to help you out, but I can only, you got to meet me halfway, right? So it's up to you. All right, so let's get started. Tell me something about these images. What do we got here?
About right, the Mayan or Aztec calendar.
Okay. Right here? Okay. I think it's Aztec, I think. You're right, yeah. Okay. What else we got? Aha, and what kind of boat? Okay, now look at my last name. What kind of heritage you think that is?
Oh, you say your last name.
Solheim?
Viking.
That's a Viking ship, right? Yeah, Solheim. My parents are from Norway. I was born in this country. My parents are from Norway, so I'm descended from Vikings, right? So I got a Viking ship up there. So okay, so there's a Viking ship. We got an Aztec calendar. And we're going to see how all these things connect here in a minute. And what we got here?
Is it conquistador?
Yes, the ultimate one. Very good. Which one?
Spanish?
Okay, which guy? Which guy? Well, he was under the Spanish crown. He wasn't Spanish, but he had the Queen Isabella of Spain finance the trip in 1492. Columbus, exactly right. You guys remember that little, 1492, right? Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Okay, he was Italian, came in under the Queen Isabella of Spain, right? Okay, so what do these things have to do with one another? Did I just put them up there because I just wanted to put some images on the PowerPoint and I was going nuts and just needed to do a PowerPoint? Or what's the connection? What's the idea there, do you think?
It was dominant civilization.
Yeah, because, the question is, a lot of people say, well, who discovered America, right? We're talking about American history, right? Who discovered America? Okay? Talking about who discovered America. We got 3 different selections here.
Vikings.
Okay. I appreciate that. I do. The Vikings, okay. Some people, well, a lot of us were taught, at least when I was in school, Columbus discovered America, right? Maybe it's still being taught, I don't know. Is that true? Okay. But it kind of ignores the fact that these people were here 10,000 years before. And don't you think they had history too? Of course they did. Yeah, it's just not all of it was written down. A lot of it's in the form of archaeological evidence. Okay, but very sophisticated societies here in America, Native American societies, right? Okay. So who discovered America? Okay. So already we have conjecture, right? We have history is not, people try to tell you history is just facts. Memorize these facts for the test, move on to your next class, chemistry, whatever, and then you get your ass out of here and you go to CSU or whatever you do, right? Okay, well, it's a little more complicated than that. It's about perspective. It's about interpretation. Okay? So that's what I want you to think about, that it's not as cut and dried as people make it out to be, the people that publish these textbooks and so forth. Okay? It really belongs to you, and you have to think about how you fit in. Okay, so let's keep going with that. So why is history important? That being said, that it's about perspective and interpretation.
Oh, you have a question?
Mm-hmm.
You got no?
So we try not to repeat the same mistakes.
Okay. Okay. So if we study history, we can not make the same mistakes over and over. So how's that working? Not so well. We keep making the same mistakes over and over, right? But we try, right? We try. We do try to learn something from history. So supposedly, if we really took those lessons to heart, okay, might be able to learn something and therefore do what? Make some changes? Okay. Right? Because I don't, if I didn't think history was important, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't make you guys suffer through, this class. If I didn't think it was important. I like what I do. I think it's important. I hope that enthusiasm spills over into your lives and that you take it to heart and that you use it. I don't want you, I don't want you, I'll put it positively, I want you to think of history as being useful to you in whatever you do. Okay? Okay. There's the past, there's the present, and there's the future, right? Do we know what's going to happen in the future? No, not really. Not even Madame Cleo on TV. She was on TV for a while. You could call her up, 1-800, Madame Cleo, and she would give you your prediction, right? And then she got pulled off the air because apparently those predictions weren't coming true. And they were charging $4.99 an hour, or it's a minute, or whatever it was, to talk to her. So even Madame Cleo couldn't accurately predict the future, right? So nobody knows really what's going to happen in the future. Okay? I think there's one chair up here, if you want to take that one. Nobody knows what's really going to happen in the future. Okay? But we do have the past. Now, we do have different interpretations and perspectives and argue about what the meaning of the past is, but we do have the past. It has happened. We have some way of studying it, right? Looking at it, examining it, maybe trying to learn something from it. Okay? So from a historical perspective, not necessarily from a mental health perspective, because they would argue something different, but the present is an illusion as we pass through time and space. What I just said now is in the past. What I have not said is in the future. It doesn't like stop and go, wait a second, okay, everybody stop, freeze. There is no frozen moment like that, right? It just continues to go on. Okay? So if we don't know what's going to happen in the future and the present is constantly moving, then what do we have to guide us? The past. Right? So if you ignore your past, if you ignore your history and you don't study it, you're not going to be prepared for what's to come. I'm not going to tell you that you can predict the future by studying history, but you can certainly prepare for it. Okay? Does anybody know what we are in right now? America, and actually most of the world. There's a name for the condition that we're in right now. It's beyond a recession. A depression. People don't like to call it that. And you're wondering, well, I'm not going to call it a depression until the mass media tells me it's a depression. Okay? Think about this. I did some research on the Great Depression in the 1930s, right? The stock market crashed 1929, October. I looked in the newspapers for the next 2 years in Toledo, Ohio. I looked at every newspaper for every day for the next 2 years, 3 years. They didn't start calling it a depression until late 1931. They were already, now we go back and we look, the stock market crashed, dude, you're in a depression. It's a depression. Why don't you call it what it is? Well, because they're right in the middle of it. So they didn't know what to call it that. Now they'd had depressions before, but you don't like to think that way, right? Because it's kind of, people, if you give it a name, then it becomes reality or whatever, No, there is reality. The reality is it is a depression. Okay? Every day, there are factories closing down. There are people losing their jobs. Is what GM yesterday said, we need another $16 billion, or we're going to fire 42,000 people. How many people have relatives in Michigan? I have relatives in Michigan. Okay? Not good. It's not good. Banks are closing. Not just here in this country. If you watch BBC World, I'd recommend all of you, if you only watch American news, you got to branch out. You got to go out. Look at other stuff. You can get online, look at BBC World News. They mention American stuff, yes, but they also give you the world picture. What you find out is that the world's in an economic crisis, a depression. Everybody. I think the only people that are doing well are maybe the Saudis, you know, because we're still addicted to oil, so they're doing okay. Actually, the Norwegians are doing pretty good too. I'll tell you more about that. That's also to do with oil. Okay. Until we stop getting addicted to oil, you know, it's going to be really hard to manage our future. So anyway, the idea is the present is an illusion as we pass through time and space. Now, from a mental health standpoint, people tell you, oh, you should live in the present, right? Okay, well, that's all good, you know. You know, enjoy life. You know, live each moment as if it's your last. But that's from a psychological perspective. From a historical perspective, the present is an illusion. Okay. Does anybody know what that picture is of, by the way?
The Aurora Borealis?
Yes. The Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis. Anybody ever seen it? Oh, man. You guys got to see it. It is absolutely amazing. There's different types. This is the ribbon kind. There's also the coolest, I think. You remember the original Star Wars when they went into hyperspace? Okay, we're going into hyperspace. And then the stars went like that, exploded out of a singularity. That's what sometimes it looks like that. There'll be a singularity right in the middle of the sky, and it looks like all the stars are pouring out of it. And it's like you're on an acid trip or something. It's, not that I've ever taken acid, but you know, it's scary. My mom said, because they're from northern Norway, when she was a kid, they were afraid to go outside during the Northern Lights. It was so dramatic. It's like the heavens were falling. You know, that they would actually hide under their beds inside because it was so scary. It's just it's beautiful and frightening all at the same time.
You have to go to Norway to see it.
What's that?
You have to go to Norway to see it.
I saw it in Minnesota. In the northern climates, you can see it under certain conditions. There are websites you can go to find out when where and when you can see the Northern Lights. But you're not going to see it in Southern California. So you have to travel north. Or if you want to go to see the Southern Lights, right, there's the opposite, you know, go farther south, way south. Okay, so what is history? I asked, I was in graduate school, and it seems like a silly question, you know. People tell you there's no such thing as a dumb question or a silly question. Actually, there is such a thing as a dumb or a silly question. I had a student a long time ago, halfway through the semester, ask me, is there a library on campus? Yeah. Have you ever thought of going there, you know? Or at one time, halfway through the semester, is there a textbook required for this course? You know, yeah, there is such a thing as a dumb question. Some things that you should just know. You should be able to find. You should be naturally curious enough just to kind of pick it up, maybe on the first day, you know, that you're in class. So now I don't want to stop people from asking questions. Far be it for me to say that, but you should always think things out. You should always think things out. When I worked in the business world, one thing I worked for Boeing for 5 years. You know, the guys that make airplanes. And I had a really mean boss. I mean, he was mean. He was just, nobody liked this guy. He was mean. He was cruel. But one thing he taught me is that you better be prepared when you go into his office. Because if you have something, you have a problem, you have a question, you better do all your homework and your research first. Because if you go in there and say, I don't understand this, he'll just throw you out of his office. And he'll come out yelling and screaming at you and embarrassing you. You're like, you know, walking away like that. So next time you go back, you go, okay, I'm going to go in there. I have all the facts straight. You go in there, okay, sir, you know, we got this, and then he still throws you out, right? So the third time you come back, you got way more than you could ever imagine, and then you find out you don't have to go back in that office anymore because you figured it out yourself. Okay? By the fourth time, you figure, I don't have to go in there and get yelled at. I already know the answer. So he, by his method, it was kind of a cruel and mean method, but he taught me to take care of it myself, which really what it's all about, self-sufficiency, right? Okay, forces for change and forces against change. I asked my professor, And I was in a doctoral program for history, and I said, you know, I hear all these different definitions of history. Could you tell me, what is your definition of history? That's a pretty good question. So this is what he told me. He said, forces for change and forces against change over time. Okay? And I just sat there kind of like a lot of you are sitting there right now. What? What does he mean by that? Forces for change and forces against. Now, this is a guy who'd been teaching for like 40 years and, you know, written articles and books, and a really smart guy. And so I really had to think about it. I mean, it's a very short definition, but I had to think about it. Now, first of all, I understand the over time part, because that's history, right? I mean, chronology, right? It goes, you know, this follows that, right? But and I understand change, but what are these forces? That's kind of generic, you know. What are these forces? So what do you think some of these forces could be? Either for change or against change. What are these forces out there?
The events that happened?
Yes, those events. And what causes those events to happen?
Change. People.
Those events cause change. People, okay, so people are part of those. So what we do as individuals, as groups, causes change, or is a force for change, or sometimes against change. Sometimes people don't want change, right? Okay? Sometimes people don't want change. You take things like racism, sexism, you know, a more equal society. There are people who don't want that, right? In fact, there's a lot of people who don't want it. That's why it's taken so long. That's why it's such a long journey, because there are people that just do not want change. They do not want change. They can't accept it. They're uncomfortable with it. It makes them angry. So there's forces against change. There's forces for change. There's forces against change. People. Okay, what else could be a force, do you think? What's that?
Environment.
The environment, yes. Mother Nature, right? Is that what you mean, like nature?
Yeah.
Okay.
Climate changes.
Yes.
Disasters.
Yes. We have little or no control over a lot of that stuff. Now, climate change, you know, we've too much emissions. Yeah, we have some negative impact on that, right? But some of these things, like earthquakes, do we control earthquakes? Unless you're like a conspiracy theorist and think that this group of 5 major industrialists control all the weather and stuff. I've heard somebody tell me that once, and I said, dude, you're paranoid. You know, that's really, you know, I mean, I think that there's, like some things, there's credence to a lot of these conspiracy theories, but that one is just too off the wall. You know, earthquakes happen, right? Hopefully not today. Right? I forgot, we're in earthquake country, right? Okay, hopefully not today. But they do happen. That's a force for change. If you have a major earthquake in, I'm knocking on wood, but you know, or laminate or whatever it is, a major earthquake, right, which they say is coming, right? Have you thought about what would happen? Do you realize how dependent we are on technology and conveniences and stuff like that? If it was, you know, if we had the major one where all the highway systems break up, the airports collapse and are destroyed, the water systems break, the power grid goes out, the gas lines are out, we're back to living like, you know, the Native American Indians who settled this place. And how many of us can live like that? How many people are totally self-sufficient? Can make your own food, hunt your own game, you know? Okay, maybe some of us could, you know. I would give it a try, you know. I don't even have anything to hunt with. The first thing I have to do is get, you know, like a bow and arrow or a gun or something. I have to do something, right? But, okay. This whole, I mean, you know, if you think about it, that is a force for change. In China, when they had that major earthquake, all those buildings, you know, all those people died. Katrina, okay? Almost destroyed New Orleans, right? These are forces for change. So nature, okay, natural disasters. Okay, very good. We have little or no control over that, too. What other forces are there for change and against change?
Conflicting ideologies.
Okay. Did you say conflicting ideologies? Okay. Could you tell us what an ideology is, or does somebody want to tell us what an ideology is? That's a very good word. I like that word. It's a good one.
It's like just a belief that people really believe in.
Okay. So give me an example. You give me an example, or somebody else give me an example. Or you can, if you want to.
Believing that abortion is wrong or right, and having a
Okay.
stance on it.
Okay, so belief systems. Ideology, the definition of ideology is a belief, basically a belief system. Okay, a system of ideas or beliefs and ideology. So the stem word of ideology is idea, right? Idea, ideology. Okay, that could be a force for change. If you put it into like global terms, there's let's say communism, versus democracy or something like that, or fascism, or whatever you want to call it, right? But you can put it in more regional terms as well, political terms. Those are ideas, systems of beliefs. You talk about religion. Is religion a major force in the world? Okay, a lot of wars have been fought in the name of religion, right? Ideologies, religious ideologies, conflicting religious ideologies, which brings up another force, which is war, right? War changes things. We're going to look at World War II. We're going to look at the Civil War. America's been at war since it started. We're just constantly at war. And even when we're not at war, we use war terminology. The war on drugs, right? The war on poverty, the war on cancer, right? We look at things in conflict terms. We are a conflict-driven society. That is one thing, whether you like it or you don't like it, it is part of who we are as Americans. We are a conflict-driven society. Okay? We move by conflict, resolving conflict. Even the way we have interpersonal communications, which I'll talk about later, we are very conflict-driven. Okay, so those are all forces for change. There's some other things, too, out there. Anybody in the medical fields at all? Okay. So disease. Okay, viruses. Influenza. It's a virus. Those things, you ever heard of the plague? That changed history, didn't it? Smallpox, we talked about Native Americans. Maybe half of them were wiped out by smallpox after Columbus's contact and subsequent European contact. So that's a major force. Technology, right? Technology. You ever notice that technology goes way ahead of where our common sense is? I mean, how about this woman who had 8 babies? She already had 6 at home. She got 8, and somebody told me she's pregnant again. I said that. I said that to my girlfriend. After 8 babies, I said, I don't think she's done yet. I looked at that woman and I said, I don't think she's done yet. And somebody told me she's pregnant again. Who is implanting these things and why? In this woman. Our technology is way ahead of how we can deal with it. Our morality and ethics. We can clone. We can genetically engineer people to make everybody look the same. Do we want that kind of world? I don't think so. I like variety. I like that we're all the same essentially, but we have differences. Those differences make life interesting, I think. Okay. All right. So anyway, that's enough of forces. Anyway, I think that's a good working definition. If you haven't, because if you thought, what is history? History is just a bunch of facts we memorized for a test, just to make the professor happy, so I can get my grade and go on to wherever you're going. No, it's more than that. That wouldn't be exciting to me. A robot could do that. Okay. So history is about perspective. Whose perspective? Well, your perspective. You got a textbook, right? The textbook. I'll borrow this for a minute. These people have a perspective on history. Is this the correct perspective? It's a very American perspective. And it's the perspective of these authors, these collective groups of authors. Okay? Everybody has their own perspective. I call it your knothole, that you look through the fence. You ever walk along a fence and you see a knothole and you look through it? When I was a kid, there was an old stadium in Seattle. That's how we used to watch the ball game, because we didn't have the money to get in. So we'd stand outside the outfield fence and look through the knothole, right? And then say, he hit it over the fence, and then all the kids would run and we'd try to get the ball. It was a lot of fun. We all have this knothole that we look through, okay, on the world. So we're looking around. It's kind of limited view, isn't it? Okay, the more experiences you get, the more different kinds of people you meet, the more travel you do, the bigger the knothole gets, the bigger your worldview gets, until it just opens up to you, right? So it's all about perspective. The wider your perspective, the more knowledge you gain, the more understanding. And interestingly enough, the more tolerance you have for other people, the more you get along with people. Okay? I think a lot of bigotry and racism and sexism has to do with a very narrow perspective. Ignorance. People just don't know. Okay? So history is about perspective. It's about bias. Okay? Look at those two pictures. Who are the good guys and who are the bad guys?
Depending on how you look at it.
Depends on it depends on who you are and how you look at it. Exactly. Okay, now most of us would look here and we just your gut instinct. Okay, American soldier doing his duty. Looks like somewhere probably in Iraq, right? Okay? Good guy, right? Look over here. These guys are all protesting. They're holding up pictures of Osama bin Laden. Not so good. I don't think I'm going to be, if I walk into this crowd with a T-shirt that, says, "Don't mess with the U.S.," I'm probably not going to come out of there alive, right? Right? So, it depends on your perspective, right? Your bias. What kind of ideas do you bring in when you're looking at something? Two different people look at the same thing, come up with totally different interpretations, right? Something to keep in mind. Interpretation. So you have bias. Everybody has bias. Okay? Some people say, I don't have any, but I'm not prejudiced at all. I have no hatred for my fellow man. I'm totally unbiased. Well, hello, Mother Teresa. How many of Mother Teresas are there? Well, she's even gone. There are not too many people like that. So all of us have certain things, preconceived notions. I think every generation we get better in America. But you have biases. Okay? So based on what our perspective and the biases that we have, we interpret things our own way. How do you know that what you're looking at is what somebody else sees? How do you know what you see is what the way you see it is the way they see it? How do you know for sure? You don't, because you don't know. You can't get inside of their head and look through their eyes. You can't get into their optical nerve, and not yet anyway. Probably that's coming next after this woman has 8 more babies. That'll be the next thing, right? We can get inside somebody's head. There was a movie by something John Malkovich. Remember that thing? Anybody ever see that movie? Being John Malkovich, was that it? That was a funny movie. So that's actually, what they were doing in that movie. But can you imagine how freaky that would be? All of a sudden you're in somebody else's scene through somebody else's eyes. Anyway, so it's about interpretation. This is a very famous painting by a Norwegian painter. Does anybody know the name of the Norwegian painter? I wouldn't expect you to know. Unless you're an art history student, then I would expect you to know, because it's a very famous painting. Edvard Munch. It's called The Scream. Okay? Now, does the world look like that? Not unless you're on acid, right? Probably doesn't look too much like that. But this guy said, this is my reality. This is my interpretation of reality. Now, who's to say that's not more accurate than anything else? It depends on how you determine accuracy. Photographic accuracy, or are you talking about emotional accuracy? That's his interpretation. That's what he saw. That's what he interpreted as being there. Okay, so history is about perspective, bias, and interpretation. It's not just about the facts. The facts would just be boring. They're not alive. These things are. You have to throw in a Viking or two. My son is going to have he's going to be married, my eldest son. He's, how old is he now? He's 29. He's getting married in October. He lives in Michigan. And him and his wife is a doctor, or she's an intern or whatever. And my son's in the military. He's in the Air Force. They're getting married, and they're going to have a medieval wedding. Now, when he was a little kid, I used to play Dungeons and Dragons and talk about history, and so this is what happens. This is what happens. And your son grows up and he has a medieval wedding. So this is what happens. I think it's great. But he told me, okay, Dad, you got to wear an outfit, So I think I'm going to show up like this. It'd be kind of cool. A Viking chieftain. It'd be awesome. Okay. a little bit about my heritage. This is where my parents are from. This is the island where my parents are from. You can see it's a sprawling metropolis. No, there's hardly anybody living there. It's an island 200 miles above the Arctic Circle. Yes, there is life above the Arctic Circle. It's not frozen constantly. Northern Norway. That road really is a 2-lane road, believe it or not. It looks like a bicycle path, doesn't it? And you got to be careful, because when you're driving on the island, there's trucks. Now the trucks, granted, are a little smaller there than they are here, but they're coming at breakneck speed right at you, and they're not moving. You know, it's like chicken. You know, who's going to move first? And at the last minute, they're coming at each other, and then last minute, they kind of somehow go into the grass a little bit and go around each other. It's amazing how they drive there. But it's a very beautiful, one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. The winters aren't as harsh as you'd imagine because of the Gulf Stream effect. Keeps it a little bit warmer. The same climate, if you were to go around that latitude, would be like Nome, Alaska. So it would be very, very, if it wasn't for the Gulf Stream, it would be constant, permafrost there. It's a very beautiful country, sparsely populated. Going way back, I was born in September 1958, September 3rd, so I was a Labor Day baby. I was born in a shopping mall. My mom was a shopper, what can I say? I was born in a shopping mall, so I still to this day feel kind of an eerie sense of calm when I'm in a shopping mall. And that's really weird for a man my age to be calm in a shopping mall, but it's because I was born in a mall, so it's kind of, all these kids running around, all these teenagers and stuff, and there I am just kind of saying, I was born in a mall. People think I'm weird, but that's the mall, Northgate Mall in Seattle. This is an aerial shot. Okay, so here's the shopping mall, here's the movie theater, and here's the hospital. See, they're all connected. In the 50s, they did stuff like that. Everything was kind of concept, it's kind of everything connected. Actually, they've gone back to that, right? This kind of everything connected thing. But, so my mom was shopping, she went into labor. Maybe she'd gone to a movie earlier, I'm not sure. My mom was a lot of fun. Compared to my dad, she was a lot of fun. My mom was a lot of fun. She might have been in a movie, then went shopping. Oh, I'm having the baby. Okay, just go over here. So I was born right there in that hospital, somewhere on this side, second floor, September 3rd, 1958, in Seattle. That shopping mall still exists. Okay, that's me at age 4. Yeah, I was kind of a big kid. I always was big. I'm on the North Atlantic, heading to Norway with my parents. That was 1963, yeah, before my birthday. And my parents and me and my brother, my sister was already in Norway at that time. But that was the first trip back to Norway my parents had after they immigrated. So it was 1963. And that's the North Atlantic. I had run of the ship. I was like running around like crazy. My parents didn't know where I was half the time. I was hanging out with the crew, exploring everything. I've just always been naturally curious and kind of precocious, so I was getting into everything. I'd be in the engine room. They go, where's Bruce? Where's Bruce? He's in the engine room. Oh my God, get him out of the engine room. What's he doing there? I was curious. Like, how do these things work, And some of the people, the crew members, were really nice. They showed me around. And my parents, they were all excited. They got to meet the captain, sit with the captain or whatever. I said, I don't care about the captain. I want to know how the engine works. I want to know, how the crew lives. And, that was more interesting to me. So anyway, that's me on the North Atlantic. That's my hometown, Seattle, Washington. Anybody ever been to Seattle? Okay. Was it raining when you were there? Oh, it was? Okay. 50-50 chance, right? When it's nice in Seattle, it is beautiful. It is really beautiful. You got Mount Rainier there, the Space Needle. Mount Rainier, as beautiful as she is a cold-blooded killer. Just any day now, that thing's going to go. If it goes, forget it. Okay, forces, right? Mother Nature. The Indian name for the mountain is Tahoma, which means big mountain. Makes sense, right? Anyway, so that's my hometown, Seattle. I don't like Starbucks coffee, though. I just like regular coffee. I don't really drink coffee that much. Okay, that's me, talking about being in the Army. I was in the Army for 6 years, and actually I have this picture in my office, and I had a student come in once and said, "You had like red hair." I said, "Yeah, I was kind of red, before I got older." But then that happens to everybody, unless you get one of those things out of a box and change it, But so I was in for 6 years. I was enlisted first, if you're not sure what that means. The lowest rank, Private 1, no stripes, nothing. I went from E1, Private 1, to Chief Warrant Officer 2. So I worked in a military prison for a while in Germany. Was in the reserves, came back to the U.S., was in the reserves, and then went back in, went to flight school, and became a warrant officer. And I'm still in the reserves, although not the active reserves. I'm in what they call the California State Military Reserve, which is all volunteer force. So you talk about dumb. That's what I'm doing right now. I don't even get paid. But I just love to do it. And what happens if there's a natural disaster in the state of California, the National Guard that are left, that aren't in Iraq or Afghanistan, are called by the governor to handle the emergency, and we then support the National Guard. We never get sent, out of the state. I work for the governor. I don't work for the president. So it's a difference between the reserve, the paid reserve, and the California State Reserve. So anyway, so that's part of my life. So I'll have stories to tell you about the military. A day doesn't go by where I don't think about something that happened to me in the Army, a lesson, that I learned. So it's a very valuable experience. Of course, it's in the lineage. My dad was in the Navy, in the Norwegian Navy. My brother was in Vietnam. He was in the Air Force. My eldest son, Björn, the one who's getting married, is in the Air Force. So just from one generation to the next, right? Did your family have military service in your generation?
Yeah, my dad was a Marine.
Yeah, see, there you go. So you have arguments about Army, Marines?
Yeah, I get bagged on a lot.
Yeah. Now we have to admit, depending on your job in the Army, if you're a Ranger or infantry or whatever, Cav, that's just tough. But the Marines basically get the worst of the worst. Not only do they get the worst jobs, but they get the worst equipment too. And then you ask them, well, how could you? And they say, well, we're proud of that. We're proud that we get crap, and we get treated like crap. I said, okay. Then you hear about the Air Force guys, and they're like going into they don't call them mess halls, they call them dining facilities. And they have like waiters that come and take their plates away, It's a totally different world. So I tease my son about that, about the Air Force. Okay, so here's me at Citrus College. Part of what I do here is I help, as it says, helping local heroes. So I help veterans when they come back. That's one of my jobs here, besides being a history teacher, history professor, whatever. I am the veterans coordinator. So we have quite a few interesting programs going on here for veterans. We have a book fund. We have what we call Boots to Books transition course, which is something, if you have not heard about it, I got some flyers on it. And even if you're not interested, I'd like you to, because we need a few more people in the class. So if anybody needs a CSU UC transferable class, counseling class, it's a very good class. It meets Tuesday nights. There's also an online version of it. So I'll pass these around. If you're interested, take one, or if you know somebody that might be interested, take one. Otherwise, just keep passing it. What this course does is help military members and their families and friends and supporters understand the military experience coming back, the transition. It's a pretty big transition. If you haven't thought about it, you're in combat one day, hostile fire, the next day you're roaming around Azusa or Glendora, right? And it's a big mind change. It's a big change for people. And the same skill sets that you have to survive in Fallujah are not probably the same skill sets that are going to serve you very well here on the 210 freeway when somebody cuts you off, or in the shopping mall, or at the ice cream stand or whatever. So you have to take those things and put them into a civilian perspective. So what this course does, and it's not taught by me, it's taught by, so I'm not self-promoting. It's taught by my friend Manuel Martinez, who is a combat veteran, has been counseling veterans for 22 years. And the class is not just for veterans. All people, I wasn't in the military. Well, do you have a loved one or a friend who was? Well, yes, almost everybody does, right, nowadays. So Well, do you want to help them? Help understand the perspective that they might have. You want to understand what they've been through. Well, yeah, so take this course. You can be one of what they call the hidden helpers. And if you're a veteran yourself or you know veterans, highly recommend it for them, especially if they just got back, because there is a very, the statistics show that it's very difficult. Not every veteran, but a lot of combat veterans especially have difficulty transitioning back into civilian life. I had difficulty transitioning back into civilian life, and I was never in combat. I was institutionalized by the military. Institutionalized just means that your whole worldview, the culture you're in is changed, is dramatically changed. And putting that back into civilian society is very difficult. I remember people seeing me after I got out of the military. They said, well, you've changed, you know. I said, well, of course I've changed, you know. It's a different. I've had different experiences. I had a lot of authority at a very young age. That's one thing about the military. At 20 years old, you might have life and death authority over a group of 6 or 7 other human beings. Now, how many people 20 years old have that kind of thing every day in and day out? You know, it's an amazing thing. It really is, and it's both a good, you know, it can be good and it can be not so good depending on how you utilize those experiences. Okay, we'll talk more about that. That's kind of the introduction to what I'm doing. Let me show you how to get the syllabus. Okay, so citruscollege.edu, right? Everybody's been on that, probably, how you signed up for courses, right? citruscollege.edu. Go to where it says Distance Education Blackboard. Click on Login to Blackboard. Okay. And then you put in your username and password. Does anybody know what their username and password is? It's pretty easy. Yes?
Your CC and Citrus is your password, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, until you change it, Citrus is your password, and your user ID is just your student number. Some people start with CC, some people with an A, right? There's A's and then there's CC's. Whatever that CC or A number is, that's your ID or username, and then the password is Citrus, you know, not very secret, right? Everybody's password is the same, but you can change it. And then it'll take you into the classes that you're enrolled in. So to demonstrate, because if I did mine now, it would look very different than your screen is going to look. So would somebody volunteer to put their, you can come up here and do it, and I can switch the screen or something so people don't see your code or whatever. Can somebody come up just who's already enrolled in the class for sure? Okay, okay, come on up, and I'll change the screen so people don't see you enter your whatever. Okay. And then we'll see what your screen looks like, and we'll go from there, because that's what everybody's going to see. You're not going to see what I see when I get into my Blackboard account, because it's a mess. Do we have success? Is it in there?
Yeah, but I'm in English class.
Okay.
It's just my old stuff. Did you add anything to it?
Let me see. Let's see. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I screwed up. Let me log in and make sure that you're logged in. If I was a director, I would yell "cut" right now, but remember, it's still. I'll edit it out later. Okay. All right. So let's see here. What in the hell is my... They changed everything. Oh, my God. This isn't your fault. I think it was my fault. No. It's my deal. Okay, let's see. Okay, so,
Did you?
well, let me see. I got to make sure I got the maybe I didn't make this class available yet. Maybe that's why you don't see it. Okay, so does anybody know what's the CRN for our class? It's 31 something or other, I think.
31321.
31321.
Oh, you.
31321? Oh, it is available. Okay. So maybe I need to enroll you in Blackboard. Let's see if we can do that. Control panel, list modify. Why is it not letting me enroll users?
Does it?
Oops. You see something that says enroll users?
Yeah.
List modify, but usually something says enroll user, but it doesn't say that in there now.
Go or course tools? No.
Yeah, no, this is where it would be here, but let me see. Let's just list your name and see if it comes up. So your last name. Just type in your last name. Okay. All right.
Do another. Look for another name or make.
No, I don't think it's you. I think it's something else. No, we don't want to remember entries. Okay. So what'd you say it was again? 31321?
Yeah.
31321.
Okay, we'll just use mine, and we'll.
Sorry.
No, that's not your fault. Okay, so we'll do it this way. Now, for some reason, Blackboard is not responding the way it's supposed to, and it's not her fault. It's for some reason you guys aren't loaded in there in Blackboard yet. Hopefully that'll happen soon. Okay, I had trouble with this last time. Shouldn't be this hard to... There we go. Jeez. Okay. So basically your thing is going to look a little bit like this once you get logged on, and it should list this class, CRN 31321. You click on that, it's going to take you to something that looks a little bit like this. Eventually I'll have lecture notes there for you and all that.